out in the old back roads of Georgia.
All right, we're near Roberta. We've come here for a certain thing. We know where we're at. We've seen this really cool historic sign.
Here on the Flint River was the headquarters of the Agent for Indian Affairs south of Ohio until the area was acquired by Georgia in the Creek Secession in January 24th, 1826. Here, Benjamin Hawkins and David B. Mitchell, agents, resided, and in 1804 and 1818 negotiated treaties with the Indians. Hawkins, agent from 1796 to 1816, here entertained hundreds of Indians and many white notables. He established an immense model farm and taught the Indians how to spin and weave and grow cotton, corn, grain, and cattle. He was appointed as the head of Indian Affairs by George Washington.
Early American history here, boys and girls.
I want to say Fort Mitchell is named after David B. Mitchell.
Oh, cool. And Fort Mitchell is where the Trail of Tears started.
Down this rough road a piece, and
So we're at Benjamin Hawkins' grave. It's on the end of Benjamin Hawkins Road, but at the time he was buried, I believe this was his plantation. He was just buried on the plantation land.
It's super snaky looking, and Stacey and snakes don't go.
I want to make Brian go first, and then we'll see.
So I'm gonna go scout, and we'll let you know if I get bit by a snake or not, which hopefully not.
I'll film it.
quality entertainment.
This is the road that we came down, and it's not very far down at all, but as you can see, it dead ends right at Hawkins' grave. Stacy's right, it looks super snaky.
Where's the groundskeeper?
The grass is as tall as you are.
Okay, it goes up on a hill.
I usually don't think of snakes, but since Stacy mentioned it, I inch along.
Somebody's been up through here. There's a trail through the grass. So we're not the only visitors out here. I'm just gonna walk up here. Now we're making Robert jealous.
So far, so good. The grave. And off to the left.
So I'm gonna walk over here to the wayside. Wasn't expecting this sort of environment here. Expected it to be in a cemetery. Alright, so there's the wayside.
Strangely blank.
There's the grave. Now we're gonna go retrieve Stacy. Okay, so we've made it up. As you can see, the grass has not been cut in a while.
Or 3 days. It's Georgia.
Do we have anything over here?
Yes.
Ooh, let's see what we got.
A lot of care was put into this.
Colonel Benjamin Hawkins, 1754-1816, erected by John Houston and the Jeffersonia Hawkins chapters, Daughters of the American Revolution. Jeffersonia Hawkins was Benjamin Hawkins' youngest daughter. Okay, so he was in charge of the Indian affairs, and he had a great love for the Creek Indians, and he thought that they would do well in society, in America, if they planted and became farmers, because he knew that the American government wanted the land. So instead of having Indians spread out all over, he was trying to encourage them to become farmers, and in that way assimilate into the American way versus being exterminated, which was going to happen. You know what I mean? It was like going to happen. They were going to take this land. So he thought, well, let's make them farmers. And that's kind of what his agenda was.
So Hawkins was actually kind of out to preserve the creek and help them to survive in the changing world.
To survive. And I think either way the culture was going to change and be altered. I don't want to smooth that over. That is kind of like when you have a way of life, and it's like when you got to do this way of life, something is kind of lost. But I thought I think it was a good goal to try it, and this caught on really well with the lower creeks, and the creeks in the upper regions, the Red Sticks, they were kind of against this assimilation. So that's why we have the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and some of those other battles in Alabama. That's kind of comes from this conflict between the two groups of the Creek Indians. Like, for example, when the Federal Road was being built, like, Benjamin Hawkins gathered all the Indians together, and they said, hey, we have to ask your permission to build the Federal Road. We want you to vote for it because it's really going to benefit you. Meanwhile, the road was already started up north, you know what I mean? So they kind of asked them to vote when they really were just going to rubber stamp it because it was going to happen no matter what. So they kind of, it's very interesting, these stories and what he had to do.
And it was just interesting, the Federal Road, I grew up in a town on the Federal Road, and the Schmidt House in Waverly Hall was a Creek stage stop that white people could not build, could not work there. It had to be run by Creek.
Yeah, so the Creeks were encouraged to open businesses and become merchants, and they're like, when this road's open and the whites come through, you'll be able to sell to them and make money.
Right.
We take a closer look at this place.
This little roadside stop is sort of fallen by the wayside, like the grass is not cut, and there's an old little, looks like there could have been a wayside or some information there, but there isn't now. Brian's gonna go look.
So we're at the wayside.
That we've already seen is blank.
And as you can see, it was a board to give you information, but as you can also see, there's no information. So here we have the grave of Benjamin Hawkins, and this is he's an important historical figure, and they've set up this where his grave is, and as a place you can come visit. I hate to say the word attraction because it is an attraction. A roadside stop.
What do we know? I mean, somebody could own this land now and we just are like trespassing, but...
Well, that red truck that came up is over there now. I think we might be trespassing, but I mean, it's a place you come and see. Maybe they did buy it. I don't know. But so we're gonna go ahead and
We're gonna go. It's so sneaky up here. We don't think they'll come after us. They'd have to have something long range.
They didn't tell us to get on. There was a red truck that came up, and
they were eyeing us suspiciously. I bet a lot of people don't come up here because it's so sneaky.
And here's his actual gravestone. Colonel Benjamin Hawkins, General George Washington's staff, Revolutionary War, August 15th, 1754 to June the 6th, 1816. So yeah, this truck came up while we're up here, and there's a couple in there, and they kind of eyed us. I smiled and nodded, thinking nothing of it. And then it occurs to me that they probably own this land because they're parked on the other side of that fence now. So apparently we're on their property, maybe?
We don't know. We're guessing.
We're
They didn't
guessing.
say anything.
They didn't say anything. We didn't say anything. But assuming we are on their property, we're going to go ahead.
But we're going to film everything no matter what.
A now private ownership of the land would explain why the state hasn't been keeping it up, and the empty wayside. We head out toward the nearby town of Roberta, a quiet, sleepy town.
Okay, so we're in Roberta proper. We've got a monument to Benjamin Hawkins. Oh, okay. Stacy's directing me where to start, because Stacy is the historian here. I'm a different kind of historian.
I think you want to start. I don't know where you want to start.
She'll figure it out.
Ring around the rosy pocket.
Okay, this is where he was born.
Okay,
I guess go right.
go right. Okay.
Yeah.
Erected in 1931 by the United States government to commemorate the life and public service of Colonel Benjamin Hawkins, who was born in Warren County, North Carolina, August 15th, 1754, and died at the Greek Indian, excuse me, who was born in Warren County, North Carolina, August 15th, 1754, and died at the Creek Indian Agency on the Flint River, June 6, 1816.
He was a student at Princeton, and shortly after the beginning of the Revolution became a member of General Washington's staff with the rank of colonel, serving with distinction throughout the war. He was one of the first senators from North Carolina and was conspicuous for his interest in Indian affairs.
And just a reminder, Colonel Hawkins was trying to help the Indians. Like, he wasn't
Yeah,
just...
I mean, he could have had like a really big political career because he was in, you know, he worked for George Washington on his staff, and he became so interested in Indian affairs that that's what he dedicated the rest of his life to. I mean, he had other opportunities.
Yeah. Colonel Hawkins was asked by General Washington to assume jurisdiction over all the Indian tribes south of the Ohio River. At the height of his career, he came to Georgia and established his home among the Creek Indians on the banks of the Flint River in Crawford County.
He built the fort, which was named in his honor, on the Ocmulgee River at Macon, and lived there while the fort was being erected, but his permanent home was at the Creek Agency. His body lies on a bluff overlooking the Flint River, where he lived among the savage tribes for 16 years, a man of letters, a mediator of peace, and faithful unto death.
And to the PC crowd.
And before you get all up in arms about the savage Indians, have you ever been in a battle with the Indians? Just think about that.
I don't know that I would actually agree with the term that a savage Indian and saying it's deserved. I would say that this monument was erected in 1931, and it reflects how people in 1931 felt about Benjamin Hawkins. So keep that in mind. Just keep the context in mind. That's why these monuments are important. You might not feel the same way in 2020 as a person who built a monument in 1931. But the fact that it's here and it says this, you're like, okay, I see where they're coming from, what they were thinking. I know how I think, and now I know about this. And you could say, oh, well, you don't need monuments. You could read about it in a book. I'm telling you, Benjamin Hawkins was really famous in his day, but he is not a household word, now. So the monument is a visual. It gives you information. It might inspire you to learn. It might inspire you to read more. And these stories about the Creeks and their struggles and their dreams and the things they built and the things they wanted to do, that's very interesting and very important.
Stacey is absolutely right, because the monument itself is a piece of history, and the monument itself has a story all its own. And I don't agree with the words savage Indians either. I mean, but I know a little bit about the Indians, or the Native Americans as they're called today. All the Native Americans I've ever met call themselves Indians.
Yeah, I do want to add something about that, because whenever you read a book, like a lot of times the introduction will say that the tribes, will be referred to as Indians because that's what they call themselves.
Oh, look, a train.
Look at this, y'all.
And a little history.
In loving memory of Clarence Mosley Ribs Peel, 1897 to 1955. Daddy, a trainman for Southern Railway for 38 years, died in a railroad accident near Hazelhurst, Georgia. He made the supreme sacrifice of staying with his train after one of his crew members, in talking with one from another train, learned that the other train was fast approaching on a curve. He chose to protect the safety of others on the rail in case of an erroneous message. It was later learned that the other train had indeed received the wrong orders.
That's Clarence Mosley Ribs Peel, November 8th, 1897, October 8th, 1955.
Clarence was a descendant of Lawrence Peely, 1621. Jesse Blackwell Peel, May 15th, 1907, October 18th, 2001. Mother, a homemaker, called this park site hallowed ground because her husband often walked the area in performing his job duties. Jessie was a descendant of Pilgrim Edward Doty, 1620. Daughters Betty Jane Rigdon, Claudine Peel, Juanita Goodson, Carlise Moncrief, and Claire Maddox, dedicated on September 25th, 2010.
You know we gotta look at the train.
I'm sure you've seen one of these before, but
Displaying a caboose is a thing in towns across the South. Maybe the North too, I don't know.
Sure wish I had Brer Rabbit.
oh, I know. Oh, geez. You can see in there, maybe. And for all you train enthusiasts out there who want to see the running gear,
Somewhere I have a video of an old coal car. I need to put that together. Nearby is the depot. Always nice to see these things maintained. Lots of history in Roberta. The story of the Creek Wars will continue.
Roberta's a nice little town, but it doesn't seem to be a lot open in this main part, possibly because of the virus. And you can't see in this way any better than the other way. I love these Saturdays. We're in some small town far from home, and there's a wind blowing. Small city square. Small town America.